moment in history, one that reveals the depth of courage, integrity, and commitment to truth. I am talking about Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's speech, The Annihilation of Caste. The Annihilation of Caste, it was prepared for the 1936 annual conference of the Jat-Pat Todak Manda of Lahore. It was a speech, but never delivered. It was a speech never delivered, but its undelivered words still echo louder than any applause could have. Dr. Ambedkar, a man of uncompromising principles, he was invited to preside over the conference. However, the organizers expressed discomfort with the ideas in his speech, which they found too bold and perhaps too painful. Ambedkar stood firm. He told the conference committee that he could not allow anyone to censor his thoughts or compromise the liberty that every speaker must have. He believed it was his duty as the president of the conference to guide the audience with what he thought was right, not what was convenient for the organizers. The reception committee finding his speech unbearable, they decided to cancel the conference. Dr. Ambedkar, rather than succumbing to their demands to revise his speech, he preferred the conference to be called up. Imagine the strength of Baba Sahib's character. It takes to choose integrity over recognition, principles over popularity. In his response to the organizers, Dr. Ambedkar explained that his views were not new. He had already communicated his belief that destroying caste required addressing the religious foundations on which it stood, not merely advocating for symbolic acts like intercaste dinners or intercaste marriages. Dr. Ambedkar had elaborated on this point in his speech because he believed it was crucial to dismantling caste. The committee members accused him of irrelevance and lengthiness of his speech. The committee questioned him. Baba Sahib ji, isn't it enough to just promote intercaste dining or intercaste marriages? Why dive so deep into religion and philosophy? Dr. Ji, do you really believe people are ready to hear such harsh truths right now? Did it really need to be this long? The committee member asked him many questions like this. But Dr. Ambedkar firmly responded that his arguments were not only relevant but essential to solving the problems of caste. When it came to the length, Dr. Ambedkar simply reminded them, you are the ones who asked me to write a detailed speech and answer all your questions. The committee members have asked him to elaborate answers. Now I did exactly what you wanted and now you are upset because it's too detailed. Make up your minds, dear organizers. That's what Babaji said. This is what Ambedkar said to the Jat-Pat Todak Mandal and their committee members. What truly troubled the organizers was his use of the term destruction of religion. But Dr. Ambedkar clarified that he did not mean a blind attack on faith or religion. He had taken great care to explain that he was against the misuse of religion to uphold caste-based oppression. The committee was afraid of his words. This fear disappointed Dr. Ambedkar. He believed that true reformers, they must face uncomfortable truths and act on them. Dr. Ambedkar also suspected another reason for the cancellation of the conference. He believed his association with the Sikh Prachar conference at Amritsar, it might have influenced the committee's decision. However, instead of prolonging the controversy, instead of prolonging that conference with that conference committee members, he chose to step back. He made it clear that he would not preside over the conference even if they agreed to his original speech. This movement from Ambedkar's life, it shows us that reform requires courage. It requires the willingness to be uncomfortable, to speak the truth when it's inconvenient, and to stand firm when the world asks us to bend. His refusal to compromise was not stubbornness. It was a declaration. It was a declaration that ideas have power and that watering them down is the same as betraying them. Even though this speech was never delivered in its intended forum, it has become a foundational book in the fight against caste oppression, awakening countless generations to the brutal realities of the caste system and the urgent need for its destruction. This speech was not just an academic critique. It was a mirror. This speech was a mirror. It held up to society, forcing it to confront its hypocrisies and prejudices. Dr. Ambedkar's words, they were not just for the mandal. They were for the entire nation, challenging its conscience and urging it to break free from the shackles of caste. Even today, his words resonate, reminding us of the unfinished task of building a society where equality is not just a distant dream, but it's a lived reality. The path of social reform in India, as Dr. Ambedkar once said, it is as challenging as the path to heaven. It is strewn with obstacles, it is strewn with resistance and a lack of support. Social reform in India has always been lonely battle with more critics than allies. These critics, as Ambedkar pointed out, these critics are broadly divided into two groups: political reformers and socialists. Both, in their own way, they undermine the importance of social reform. Dr. Ambedkar emphasizes that people understood that real progress in any field was impossible without fixing the social problems caused by harmful customs. This understanding gave birth to the National Social Conference, an organization that worked alongside the Indian National Congress at that time. While the Congress focused on political weakness, the social conference worked on social issues. For a while, the two groups worked in tandem like two wings of the same bird. They even held their sessions under the same roof. But soon they diverged. These two groups, they diverged and became adversaries. The social conference was sidelined, its influence diminished, and its voice drowned out by the louder cries from political reform. The final nail in the coffin, it came when the Congress, under Tilak's leadership, withdrew its courtesy to the social conference, even threatening to burn its pandal. This marked the end of the social conference, leaving the field open for political reform. Dr. Ambedkar was critical. Dr. Ambedkar was critical of this development. He quoted W.C. Banerjee, a prominent Congress leader. He dismissed the need for social reform before political reform. Banerjee argued that widow remarriage or child marriages, they had no bearing on India's readiness for political reform. But Dr. Ambedkar challenged. Dr. Ambedkar challenged this view. He asked, how can a society that denies basic human dignity and basic human rights to a significant section of its own population be deemed to fit for self-rule. Ambedkar drew attention to the plight of the untouchables, illustrating how caste oppression made it impossible for them to live with dignity. He recounted horrific practices such as untouchables being forced to carry brooms tied to their waists to erase their footprints, or earthen pots around their necks to collect their spit so it wouldn't contaminate the ground. Dr. Ambedkar described how untouchables were denied access to public spaces, how untouchables were denied access to wells and schools. They were humiliated for wearing certain clothes, using metal pots, or even consuming ghee. These were not isolated incidents but widespread practices across the country. Dr. Ambedkar then posed a series of piercing questions to the political reformers. Are you fit for political power when you deny public education to your own countrymen? Are you fit for political power when you deny public education to your own countrymen? Are you fit for political power when you don't let them drink water from public wells or walk on public streets? Are you fit for political power when you impose restrictions on what they can wear, what they can eat, or how they live their lives? These questions get straight to the core of the issues. Dr. Ambedkar highlighted a simple but powerful idea. If Indians believed it was wrong for one country to rule over another, like the British ruling India, then they should also agree that it is equally wrong for one class of people to dominate or to control another within their own society. He was urging Indians to apply the same principle of fairness and equality, not just against colonialism, but also against social inequalities like caste discrimination. According to Dr. Ambedkar, the failure of social reform party is lay in the narrow focus of the reformers. The social conference limited itself to issues like widow remarriage and child marriage, which primarily affected the upper caste Hindu families. It did not address the larger question. It did not address the larger question of dismantling the caste system. The reformers lacked either the courage or the conviction to challenge the caste hierarchy. They fought for changes that were close to their own lives but ignored the systematic oppression that affected billions of untouchables. This failure to tackle the core issue of caste was why the movement for social reform lost its momentum and eventually faded into obscurity. Dr. Ambedkar emphasized that social reform is not just about small changes within families or within communities. It is about the complete reconstruction of society. He argued that political reform must be built on a foundation of social reform. Without this, any political framework would lack stability and permanence. He referred to Ferdinand Lassalle, a renowned political thinker, who said, the actual constitution of a country has its existence only in the actual condition of force which exists in the country. This means that political systems can only work if they reflect the realities of the social forces within the same society. We see evidence. We can see the evidence of this principle in our own history. It highlights how the communal award serves as an example of the inseparable connection between social and political issues. Because the communal award was a decision by the British government in 1932 to allocate political representation to various communities, including scheduled caste. Based on their distinct social identity. Dr. Ambedkar pointed out that this decision demonstrated an important truth. Even those who prioritize the political reform over social reform, they had to eventually acknowledge the reality of social division in society, such as caste. The social structure of India was so deeply entrenched that any political framework or constitution had to account for it. Ignoring these social divisions, it would result in a political system that failed to represent the people fairly. In this sense, the communal award was a validation of what social reformers like Dr. Ambedkar had been advocating. It proved that social issues such as caste discrimination, they could not be ignored or they could not be dismissed as irrelevant to political matters. Instead, these issues were central to building a fair and just political system. Baba Sahib says that there are many among us who believe that the solution to our problem lies solely in economic reform. These socialists argue that man is primarily an economic being and that inequality in wealth and prosperity is the root cause of all suffering. They claim that once economic disparities are addressed, all other social ills, they will disappear. But Ambedkar says, can we accept this view without questioning? Dr. Ambedkar asks us to examine these claims carefully. Are humans driven only by economic motives? Is property the only source of power in our society? The answer is an emphatic no. Look around you. Social status and religion, they wield power over people in ways that often overshadow economic strength. Dr. Ambedkar asked, why do males in India bow before penniless sadhus and fakirs? Why do the poorest of the poor sell their meager possessions to embark on pilgrimages? This is not the power of wealth. This is the power of belief of social conditioning and power of belief of religion. History shows us repeatedly that religion and social status, they have been sources of immense power. They are capable of shaping societies and control individuals far more than money ever could. So, Dr. Ambedkar says, consider the story of the plebeians. Consider the story of plebeians in the ancient Rome. Plebeians fought for the right to elect their own consul. Though they won the right on paper, they were repeatedly denied true representation. Why? Because religion, it manipulated by the patricians, overruled the will of the people. The plebeians themselves believed that no one could take office without the approval of the oracle. Controlled by the patrician priests. They were so bound by their religion, they were so bound by their religious beliefs that they gave up their hard-won rights rather than challenging the system. This is the lesson we must learn. Power does not rest in wealth alone. Social and religious systems both can enslave people as economic inequality. In India, caste is one such system. It is hierarchy. It is a hierarchy that denies equality, that denies justice, that denies fraternity. The very principles on which our nation should stand. Dr. Ambedkar made it clear, caste is the root cause of India's disunity. It divides our people. Caste divides our people. It weakens our struggles and perpetuates oppression. No matter how noble the ideals of socialism may be, they cannot be realized in a society shackled by caste. Even if by some miracle a socialist revolution were to succeed, would it solve the problem? No. The new socialist state would immediately face the same social challenges that exist today. Prejudices of caste, the notions of purity, the notions of pollution, the distinction of high, the distinction of low. Without addressing these issues, how can such a state function? So, Baba Sahib says, let us not be deceived by the illusion that economic reform alone will save us. Let us recognize that the caste system is the greatest obstacle to our progress. Dr. Ambedkar says, the caste system is not merely a division of labor. It goes far beyond that. It divides laborers themselves. It places them into rigid compartments, separating them like oil and water, and ranks them in a crucial hierarchy. Can you imagine a system where one group of workers is placed on a pedestal while others are pushed into the dirt generations after generation? That's what the caste system does. Now, let us break this down further. Division of labor in any civilized society is natural. It is about people choosing roles that suit their talents and interests. But the caste system, it doesn't allow for choice. It's like someone handing you a script for your life before you are even born, telling you this is your role and you can't change it. And what is the role based on? Your skills? Your passion? Never. It's based solely on who your parents are. What is your caste? Think about the damage this causes. Imagine a young man or woman with incredible talent for arts, science or business being told, sorry, your caste says you are only allowed to sweep streets. How can a society grow? How can a society grow when it changes its people to jobs they didn't choose? So, Dr. Ambedkar rightly pointed out that this forced stratification of occupations is not just unnatural, it's downright dangerous. And here is another problem. Industry and society are constantly changing. New technologies emerge. World jobs fade away. But the caste system doesn't allow people the freedom to adapt. It tells them, stay in your lane, even if that lane leads to poverty. This rigidity becomes a direct cause of unemployment. How many times have we seen people in India starve rather than take up a job outside their caste? That's not laziness. That's the weight of centuries of stigma and tradition crushing them. But the tragedy doesn't stop there. Baba Sahib says, the tragedy doesn't stop there. The caste system not only limits what people can do, but also humiliates them for doing it. Certain jobs are labeled as degraded or unclean jobs, and those who perform them, they are treated with contempt. Can we expect someone to put their heart and soul into a job when society looks down on them for doing the job? Dr. Ambedkar Ambedkar said, what kind of efficiency can you expect in system where neither a person's heart nor their mind is in their work? And that's the heart of the issue. The caste system is not just an outdated relic. It's an economic and social disaster. It's an economic disaster as well as it's a social disaster. It strangles human potential, suffocates ambition, and breeds inefficiency. It's not just about poverty. It's about denying people the basic dignity of choosing their path in life. Dr. Ambedkar believed that this system rooted in the dogma of predestination, it is fundamentally incompatible with a modern, just, and a human society. And he was right. How can we talk about progress, equality, or innovation when millions of people are locked into roles they never choose, based on hierarchy they never consented to? Dr. B.R. Ambedkar argued that one of the most observed justification given for its existence is the claim that it was established to preserve racial purity. He pointed out that the idea of a pure race, it is nothing but a myth. Ethnologists worldwide, they agree that no race exists in its purest form. Humanity is a rich tapestry of mixed bloodlines. And India, with its long history of migrations and cultural exchanges, India is no exception from that. So, Dr. Ambedkar highlighted that even the so-called upper caste, they have foreign strains in their lineage. He referenced to the work of Mr. D.R. Bhandarkar, who had shown that there is no class or no caste in India that is free from external influences. Even the upper caste who pride themselves on their supposed exclusivity, they were described by Dr. Ambedkar as they are living under a false sense of superiority. Baba Sahib asserted that the caste system did not originate to maintain racial purity, as it is emerged long after the various races in India, they had already intermixed both biologically and culturally. Dr. Ambedkar pointed out that groups within a particular region, such as Brahmin and a Chemar in Punjab and a Brahmin and a Pariya in Tamil Nadu, they share the same racial heritage. This means they come from the same genetic stock and they are not racially distinct from each other. The differences between them are not biological or not racial, but purely social and man-made. By highlighting this, Dr. Ambedkar emphasizes that caste is not a marker of inherent physical or biological differences. Instead, it is a hierarchical system that divides people within the same racial group based on arbitrary social rules. These divisions were created and perpetuated to establish superiority for certain groups, not because of any scientific or racial basis. These distinctions are artificial and socially engineered to perpetuate inequality. Dr. Ambedkar debunked the idea that caste divisions stem from racial differences by showing that caste does not align with any racial logic. If caste were rooted in race, individuals within the same geographic and racial community would not be divided into such rigid hierarchies. This observation exposes the caste system as a social construct designed to exploit and marginalize certain groups rather than a natural or scientific system. Dr. Ambedkar also critiqued. He critiqued the argument that caste aligns with the eugenic principle, that the caste system does not ensure judicious mating. He emphasized that caste only prohibits intercaste marriages without providing a system to determine which individuals within the same caste should marry. He added that if caste had a eugenic origin, then subcaste would also need to have a eugenic basis. However, Dr. Ambedkar dismissed this idea as absurd, stating that subcastes are merely artificial divisions within the same caste and have no scientific foundation.